Bills Mafia. On today's Air Raid Hour pregame, we'll be breaking down what we expect to see from the Bills today, plus previewing key matchups and handing out our pregame superlatives. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in Bills Mafia to the Air Raid Hour pregame show presented by the Cover One Sports Network and Picasso's Pizza. And Dave, I'll tell you what, we got a lot to talk about today as the Buffalo Bills prepare the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think the most important thing that we need to talk about before this show gets started is Taylor Swift going to be there?
I mean, I should ask my wife before I came on. She's a Swiftie, and I'm sure that's really all she cares about for this game. But that's the big question. Hanging over everyone's head.
I was having a conversation with my buddy. I was like, they're going to pan to Taylor Swift in the box, and like Haley Steinfeld's going to be like right next to her, and like everyone's just going to lose their mind. Like it's just going to be a total bizarro world if something like that were to occur. But in reality, it's a big game in Arrowhead today. The Chiefs, they have the number 1 seed on the line, and the Buffalo Bills, their playoff hopes are on the line. And I said it before, the playoffs begin today. Because if the Buffalo Bills want their best shot at making the postseason without some big time help, you got to run the table. Both teams have a lot on the line today.
Both teams have a lot on the line, and you take a look just really quick at the AFC conference standings, and the Bills sitting there in 11th place, but some big games on the docket today outside of Bills Chiefs. You got the Jags and Browns playing. We're kind of hoping the Jags win that one. You got the Texans and Jets playing. It'd be nice if the Jets could pull something off at home, back to Zach Wilson. Mm-hmm. And then maybe the biggest one of the day, underrated biggest one, is that Chargers-Broncos game in the late slate, same time as the Bills. Chargers at home against the Broncos. Would really need the Chargers to knock off the Broncos there. But ultimately, this Chiefs-Bills game, as you said, the Bills really need a conference win at this point, as they're sitting there at 3-5 in the conference. They really need a conference win, as that looks like it's going to come into play when it comes to tiebreakers in the AFC playoffs, and they really need to get this conference win. So a lot on the line for both teams. Obviously, the Patriots winning on Thursday night against the Steelers was a help to the Bills, although it immediately didn't change anything in the standings. It was a Pittsburgh Steelers loss, which was a big help.
2 big storylines this week, not pertaining to Bills Chiefs, not pertaining to the game. Number 1 is obviously Von Miller and his legal issues. We addressed that on our Monday show this week. We're probably not going to talk about a lot about it today just because it doesn't pertain to the game. And the second big story of the week that was not Bills Chiefs related was Ty Dune's TMZ style piece on Sean McDermott's tenure as Buffalo Bills head coach. Again, since this is a pregame show, just as a heads up, we'll likely not be addressing either of those 2 things in great detail. So let's get to what's going on at Arrowhead. The weather report, 40s, cloudy, 5 to 15 mile per hour wind. Really, weather is not going to be an issue at all in this football game. Then we get to the projected inactives. And let's start with the Kansas City Chiefs, because the Kansas City Chiefs are going through it right now with some injuries. Here's, to me, the biggest one. Isaiah Pacheco, who has been the heart and soul of their offense, really, this season. He is out of this game. He will be replaced by a combination of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jerick McKinnon. You have Drew Tranquill, who is out. He's been playing really good football for them, but they're also getting Nick Bolton back off of IR this week, so that kind of cancels that out. They're losing Brian Cook, their third safety, who they utilize a lot. He's a guy that we both loved coming out of Cincinnati, wanted the Bills to draft. Great young player. And they're out Donovan Smith, their starting left tackle. So another player that you loved, I believe he was one of your guys last year in the draft, Wanya Morris, is starting for the Kansas City Chiefs today at left tackle. So the Chiefs are going through it a little bit injury-wise.
They're going through it, and I'll start with Wanya Morris because he was my no matter what list, and was really hoping the Bills would maybe take a look at him. obviously he's come kind of moot now with Spencer Brown's elevated play, but a good test for Wanya Morris coming in. He's going to have his hands full with guys like AJ Epinesa, I would imagine, is primarily going to be the one on his side. It'll be a good matchup, right? And it'll really give him a test. But yeah, go ahead.
We've been using Leonard Floyd a lot at left end,
Right.
and we saw what Leonard Floyd did to the Eagles' backup tackle when Lane Johnson was out. This might be a week where you want to flip Leonard Floyd back and play him more on the right side and get a veteran like Leonard Floyd going up against Wanya Morris. That could be something that we definitely talk about when we get to the Bills defense today. That could be a matchup you want to take advantage of.
Certainly will be, and I like that idea, and we'll talk about that when we get to the Bills defense. But Isaiah Pacheco, I do think, like, Nick Bolton back to me is, if he's full health, is an upgrade over Drew Tranquill. So I don't think being out is really that bad. I mean, for depth, sure, but Pacheco to me is the big one. He really is the guy, like Mahomes, Kelsey, I get that, but he is really the guy that emotionally gets that team going. I feel like his style of running, his ability to kind of keep his balance and get those extra tough yards, and just the manner in which he runs, his aggressive style, his high contact style, that doesn't really match up well with the Bills' sort of, quote, undersized, more of like speed type defense. So that is a big advantage for the Bills, that they're not going to have to go up against the likes of Isaiah Pacheco. Now, I will caution to say that if a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who is more of a, I guess, we'll call it a lesser version of Isaiah Pacheco, if he gets going, that's still potentially a problem for the Bills. And McKinnon is kind of that do-it-all guy, but Pacheco being out, I think, emotionally is certainly a hit to the Chiefs as well.
He was the identity of that offense this year, right? Like, Travis Kelce's having a fine season statistically, but he hasn't looked like the Travis Kelce of old. Those wide receivers have been downright bad outside of a game or two here from Rashee Rice. Like, Isaiah Pacheco has legitimately been who they go to when they need something of importance on that offense. He's been the one who's sort of kept the trains on the track outside of Patrick Mahomes doing his thing at quarterback. So really, that is a big loss for them. It's going to be really interesting to see how they choose to pivot, whether it's to go to Clyde Edwards-Helaire or to lean into the passing game and put Jerick McKinnon out on the field a lot too. So that'll be something to keep an eye out for. And we'll talk about that some more as we get going this morning. The Buffalo Bills, rather healthy. A lot of fulls. The only questionables this week were Kyer Elam, who's going to stay on injured reserve, and Dawson Knox, who's coming off of injured reserve and is expected to play today. AJ Klein was cut for him. So coming off the bye week, everyone healthy. The Bills' projected inactives is probably going to be Alec Anderson again. It's probably going to be Jermaine Ifedi again. It's probably going to be Poona Ford again. And it's probably going to be Damar Hamlin again. That leads us to the 5th inactive spot. That is typically the spot that went to AJ Klein, who is no longer on the roster. So it's going to be really interesting to see who the Buffalo Bills choose to take off of the active game day roster in order to clear up a spot for Dawson Knox. Are they simply going to inactive Quentin Morris and let Dawson Knox just do what Quentin Morris has been doing? Or you look at this roster and you're like, well, where do we cut? Defensive end. The Buffalo Bills have been carrying 5 defensive ends every game. A guy like Kingsley Jonathan or maybe Shaq Lawson could be inactive in this game, because Sean McDermott, I guess, when he said I'm a football coach, not an investigator, made it pretty clear that Von Miller is probably going to play in this football game.
Yeah, those comments were pretty telling. Unless something weird happens, this is again just my prediction hat on, not anything personal in this opinion. It's just what I would imagine. I think it would be Von Miller is active today. I think the Bills are still trying to find something with Von Miller, and they're going to keep trotting him out there for those 20-ish snaps a game and hope that he can start making some impact plays. And again, that totally separate from what's happening off the field. I think that's from the football standpoint what they're hoping. So yeah, I do think Kingsley Jonathan deserves more of a chance. But Shaq Lawson, Kingsley Jonathan, that's an option. Could be Quentin Morris. it'll be interesting to see. I think if the Bills feel fully confident in sort of health-wise what Dawson Knox is bringing back coming off IR, then that could be a possibility as well. But I don't know. I feel like in this game, you maybe want all of that offensive weaponry available to you, even though Quentin Morris
Yeah.
plays more of a niche role in that scenario. But it gives you more flexibility formation-wise. It gives you more flexibility subbing in and out. Dawson Knox, maybe of his conditioning, etc. You know, it needs to be waved in and out. So I like where you're going with that. So
Yeah, I mean, going back into like earlier this season, my guess is it's probably going to be Kingsley Jonathan that gets set down if they want the pass rush pop because a guy like Isaiah Pacheco is hurt and they think maybe the Chiefs are going to run the ball less. Maybe there's a chance that Kingsley Jonathan is active and it's Shaq Lawson who's more of the run defender, the edge setter that gets sat down. If it was me personally, I would make Von Miller inactive, and it's not even just having to do with all the stuff that's going on. I would just rather Shaq Lawson and Kingsley Jonathan play than Von Miller because Von Miller's been a liability, quite frankly, the last couple of weeks that he has played on the football field. So unless something drastically changed over the bye week and like that knee brace comes off or something, I honestly think the Buffalo Bills have a better shot of pressuring the quarterback and stopping the run with Kingsley Jonathan and Shaq Lawson. Like that's where we're at right now with Von Miller. But that's, again, a personal opinion, not sort of a prognostication. It'll likely be either Morris, Jonathan, or Lawson out and Dawson Knox in. So in a moment, we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills offense and what they can do to sort of counteract what the Kansas City Chiefs and Steve Spagnuolo are going to throw at them on defense. But first, a quick word here from the guys over at the Cover One Buffalo podcast on how you can best support us here at Cover One.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
All right. The big story as we start now to talk about the Buffalo Bills offense, Dawson Knox returns to the lineup. And the question is what does this mean for the Buffalo Bills offense in totality? Could it have a massive effect on Khalil Shakir because the Buffalo Bills transition back to 12 personnel? Could we just be mixing in 12 personnel and maybe see a little bit less of David Edwards and that sixth offensive lineman? Or maybe at least early on, while Dawson Knox gets ramped back up, maybe he simply just replaces Quentin Morris and the 20 to 25 or so snaps that he plays a game. Dave, what do you think we're going to see this week in Arrowhead in regards to Dawson Knox, and who does it have the biggest effect on?
Yeah, it's a good question. I personally think that at least for this game, it's like, yeah, and I agree with Randy. I hope it doesn't diminish Shakir's role. And I think what you'll see is I do think if the Bills decide to attack this 28th ranked DVOA rush defense of the Kansas City Chiefs, that Dawson Knox comes in 12 personnel along with Dalton Kincaid to potentially give the Bills a nice baseline formation to rush out of, right? And you look at the Chiefs defensively, they've given up over 100 rushing yards in every game this year except for two. The last 2 weeks against the Packers and Raiders, two teams that really haven't been great offensively, both ran the ball really well against this Chiefs front. And I think that's an advantage for the Bills having Dawson Knox back in the lineup from a 12 personnel standpoint. Now, I don't think that means they're going to go really heavy towards that schematically, but I do think for 20 odd snaps in this game, it's a good way to get Dawson Knox back in the field. As we know, he's been pretty good blocker throughout his career at tight end. Now, the question will be, is that wrist fully healthy? Presumably he is back to full health, practice in full, coming off the IR. You think that he's ready to roll, but you wonder how many routes and stuff he's going to run conditioning wise. And that's why I feel like it may be good for him to
Mhm.
get back in the swing of things from a blocking perspective, give the Bills an advantage, which they should have in the ground on the
Yeah.
ground against this Chiefs
And
rush D.
and I don't have like the knowledge to go about how to do this kind of research and how to filter whatever all the databases that we use to prepare for the show. But I wonder almost if you could take Quentin Morris's role, because Quentin Morris comes in for 12 personnel sometimes, and Quentin Morris also comes in to just give Dalton Kincaid a breather, and he comes in situations where you want to run the ball,
Yep.
right? Like the Bills take Dalton Kincaid off the football field for Quentin Morris, and Bills fans have not complained.
Right.
They don't do it a lot, but they do it. I guarantee you they're going to complain when Dawson Knox brings Dalton Kincaid off the field. So I would caution you to maybe like think back to just 2 weeks previous when you weren't complaining that Quentin Morris was coming on the field for Dalton Kincaid. That's all I ask. But if you combine Quentin Morris on the field and use Dawson Knox in that role, and you use Dawson Knox in the David Edwards role, that might even get you up to like 30, 35 snaps or so. The only caveat being, I'm not sure when Morris and Edwards were on the field at the same time. That's where I don't know how to do that kind of research and figure it out. But I'll be surprised if Dawson Knox return affects Khalil Shakir or Dalton Kincaid, just because they have been so important and so vital to what the Buffalo Bills do on offense. And we need to do a hard reset at the offensive skill position this offseason, because we need to have a succession plan for Stefon Diggs, and we need to get another young wide receiver in here with alpha X capability. And we need to go out. We need to replace Deontay Hardy and Trent Sherfield and find depth receivers that can contribute more to this football team. Because right now we are so dependent on Diggs, Davis, Shakir, Kincaid. It's like 4 dudes. And you understand the limitations that a guy like Gabriel Davis has too, on top of all that. So the Buffalo Bills, like Kincaid and Shakir, have been some of the real positives, the real big play guys on this team. We cannot go away from them, and I don't think they will.
Can't go away from them, but I also don't think it means you can't sprinkle in a few things for Knox, right? Because as
100%.
Roy puts out, he's more than just blocking. Yes, he was our weapon at tight end before Dalton Kincaid. So having more weapons available to you is never a bad thing. It gives Joe Brady options, but I also think, like, with it being his first game back. Now, I know Knox has had some good games against the Chiefs in the past. I think that there's room for him to get a handful of targets in this game. Don't get me wrong, but I think it will depend on how heavy the Bills go passing wise in this game from a volume perspective. I think if the Bills do try to stay a little bit more balanced, given the matchup really dictates that they should have a good advantage on the ground, that could potentially just mean fewer volume and just fewer targets overall across the board. But if they do go heavy volume, let's say Josh Allen has 40 plus passing attempts in this game, 35 plus passing attempts, there's a good chance Dawson Knox gets 4 or 5 targets in this game.
Speaking of targets and guys on the field, Deontay Hardy returns to the lineup this week. The free agent disappointment was benched last week in favor of Andy Isabella. The weather, it was kind of disappointing to me because the weather did not allow the Bills to maybe use Isabella as they maybe intended to use him last week. And now they're out of call-ups for Andy Isabella. So if they want to bring him up again, they'd have to sign him to the active roster. And I'm also rather disappointed because I love, and we've talked about on this show, the utilization of motion and window dressing. And I was hoping it would be a big part of today's game plan. However, I don't know how much the Bills are going to want to put Deontay Hardy on the field on offense. Do you have any concerns about the Bills maybe not utilizing motion and, the jet sweep fakes and things of that nature because they don't want to put Deontay Hardy on offense? Or do we see Deontay Hardy maybe reinfused into this offense?
Well, I will say this. Deontay Hardy shouldn't dictate whether or not you use motion, right?
That is true. That is true.
you should not be saying, like, oh, the only way.
But he kind of does. So,
but he kind of does. Look, I mean, it's fair to say that it's been a disappointing signing. I think there were higher hopes maybe for his contributions on offense. Now he can still contribute on special teams. That's fine. But I'm a firm believer that just having him on the field or not having him on the field should have any bearing on what motion you use. So to me, like, I'm not really that concerned about that aspect of it. I would just like to see the Bills use motion more, regardless of who and what personnel are on the field. So look, I my expectations have essentially become 0 for Deontay Hardy. Anything we get out of him to me is a bonus. Good special teams play here or there, fine. And again, my expectations there are essentially 0, just given how many penalties are called on returns these days in the NFL and special teams. So for me, my expectations now are quite low. So anything we get out of him really is a bonus.
Josh Allen, another guy who was sort of the talk of social media this week, thanks in large part to a wonderful rant by Mike Greenberg on ESPN, who decided to go full heel in the opposite direction and throw 100% of his support behind Josh Allen, which is not something you often see on those ESPN and those Fox Sports morning shows. It's mostly anti-Josh Allen. They've sort of vilified him and turned him into sort of the whipping boy and the quarterback that is attacked the most in the media. So Mike Greenberg turned heel and flipped all that on its head this week. So that was a big talking point, and that was nice to see. Josh Allen went absolutely nuclear versus the Philadelphia Eagles, 420 yards, 4 total touchdowns. He seems to really be clicking with new offensive coordinator Joe Brady. We're going to need another game like that today from Josh Allen in Arrowhead.
We are. You start to take a look at the last 4 games the Bills have played against the Chiefs. All of them have been at Arrowhead. They're 2-2, 2 wins in the regular season, 2 losses in the playoffs. The Bills have scored 30.5 points a game in their last 4 games against the Chiefs. So their offense has shown up these last 4 games against the Chiefs, all at Arrowhead, and we're going to need that again today. If you say the Bills are going to score, if they're right at that number 30.5, they score 30, 31 points, you'd like to think that would give you and put you in the position where you're going to have a good chance to win this game.
Yeah.
But again, these Bills Chiefs games tend to, they tend to explode a bit. The last 2 obviously being the playoff game and then the game on the road in the playoffs, the 13 seconds game. So obviously the last time these 2 teams met, 24-20 was the final, and the Bills winning on the road in the regular season last year. So stylistically, I feel like if the Bills can put up 30 points with Josh Allen at the helm, clicking with Joe Brady, 30, I put the tweet out last week, I think it was 32 points against the Jets, 31 points in regulation against the Eagles, both pretty good defenses, 34 total. Like, that's a good trend. I know it's a small sample size, but the Bills, if they want to continue on that trend and they can kind of hit that 30-point mark, I think that's a big advantage for them in this game.
Randy Hartman comes in and says, surprise, surprise, the game plan will be essentially, hey, Josh, go make plays. I'm going to pull my best Lee Corso on College Game Day here. Not so fast, my friend Randy, because my next talking point, while we want Josh Allen to go nuclear because that's always fun and that's always exciting, my next talking point here is that establishing the running game against the Kansas City Chiefs is going, in my opinion, to be vital. And I want to thank at 17 for 6 on Twitter for pulling up these statistics so I didn't have to do it. But the Chiefs this season, rushing yards per attempt allowed, they are 28th in the NFL. Rushing defense DVOA, they are 28th in the NFL. Rushing defense EPA, they are 31st in the NFL. Rushing defense EPA per attempt, 27th in the NFL. Run stuff rate, they are 29th in the NFL. Rushing defense success rate, they are 21st in the NFL. Cook, Murray, Johnson, they need to be heavily involved in this football game, and the Buffalo Bills need to make it a focal point to really utilize, stick with, and establish a running game. It doesn't need to be the identity of your offense, but it needs to be a good central integral part that you don't go away from. You don't have entire drives where you stop running the ball. The Buffalo Bills need to run it today.
They do need to run it. Josh Allen needs to be part of that run game as well, as Randy says. Chiefs last 2 games against, I know the Packers have been coming on, but really the Packers haven't been a good running team this year. Over 120 rushing yards against the Chiefs in that win. The Raiders the week before, even in a game where they were severely outmanned and the Chiefs ultimately came back, stuck with the running game, over 100 yards for the Raiders in that game. The Bills should have an advantage. Dawson Knox being back to maybe inline block a bit as well. Like, the Bills have to stick with the running game today, just like they did against the Eagles. They did stick with it against the Eagles, who came into that game as the number 1 rush D in the NFL. So yes, Josh Allen's a big part of that. Josh Allen's a big reason why the Bills put up the most rushing yards against the Eagles of any team this year, but they stuck with it, right? And Josh Allen still had a hell of a day passing the ball as well. So again, I think the rushing game is very important. The Bills should have an advantage there, and Josh Allen needs to be a part of it if they can stick with it, if they can be efficient with that ground game. It is definitely a big factor in this game, and I think that doesn't mean that Josh Allen's not going to sling the ball around a lot, but the Bills do need to be balanced, I think, today for sure.
We get the first Travis Kelce versus Dalton Kincaid matchup. Any thoughts on the one of the GOAT tight ends in National Football League history? I don't want to disrespect Gronk like that, but one of the GOAT tight ends in NFL history paired up against and matched up against today a guy who in the pre-draft process, a lot of people were like, we don't want to jump the gun. We don't want to put our foot in our mouths. We don't want to make too big of a comparison. We don't want to make this label. A lot of people were afraid to, but people were like, hey, when you watch Dalton can play kind of sort of makes you think of that guy over in Kansas City. So it'll be interesting to see those two guys going toe to toe today.
Yeah, I expect Kelce to have a big game. Look, and it's been, I guess I would call it a quieter type of season for him. Obviously had the injury early in the year, and
quiet on the field.
Quiet on the field, not off the field. But I mean, it brings the question of like, is there a lot of pressure on Dalton Kincaid in this game? The Chiefs, DVOA wise, are 7th against tight ends. They're pretty good against defending tight ends. I'm not necessarily expecting a monster game from Dalton Kincaid, but I mean, look, the comparisons are fair. I don't think Kelce has a lateral agility cover Kincaid. Yeah, that
you know what I meant, Randy.
That's a good one. That's fair. Let's get them playing both sides here.
The Bills are gonna go thick dime and bring Dalton Kincaid out to cover Travis Kelce.
They should like force team like, all right, the NFL is gonna come in and make Kelce's gonna have to cover Dalton Kincaid man to man all game, and Kincaid's gonna have to cover Kelce, and let's see what happens.
I like that for the Bills. I would like that for the Bills. I think age would be a factor on that one.
Still, obviously, Kincaid's a rookie, but he's putting together a really nice season as a rookie tight end, which has historically been very hard to do. If Kincaid does he leave with Swift? Wow. Mr. Take Your Girl. Okay. Yeah, that would be interesting. Kincaid has been essentially the number 2 option for this offense for several weeks now in the passing game. So I think that will continue, and that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to have a better game than Travis Kelce, but he should. Yeah. If Kincaid has a big game, that to me means the Bills are having a really successful day on offense, because it's not the best matchup for him.
For the love of all things holy, make sure you throw that man the ball in the second half this week. That would be something. It would also be nice to see a big game from Stefon Diggs. He's been quiet the last couple of weeks. I'm going to use one of your words here. I would like to see the Buffalo Bills pepper him with some targets early in this game, get him going, hopefully get him towards double-digit targets and get him up into triple-digit receiving yards.
Yeah, I mean, precursor here, hint, whatever. Like, Stefon Diggs is a good chance to be my take me higher player for today because you use this phrase a lot in sports, and it's more anecdotal than anything, but he is due, right, for kind of a big game. This game against the Chiefs for the Bills has become a rivalry of sorts, right? It's been kind of reminds me a bit of those Colts Pats games of the Manning Brady era, right? Like, weren't in the same division, but they seem to play each other every year. They seem to meet in the playoffs all the time. This Bills Chiefs kind of matchup has become that of this sort of era, and Stefon Diggs needs to be at the center of that, in my opinion. If he has a big game today, again, like, to me, if him and Kincaid both have big games because they've been the number 1 and number 2 targets for this team for this season, that's going to put the Bills in the best position to come out of this game with 30, plus points. And I do think it's a game for Stefon Diggs again to kind of showcase, like, hey, I'm still one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Maybe people have stopped talking about him a bit. Maybe all this sort of nonsense, chatter around the Bills can be quieted a bit if Stefon Diggs comes up and has a big game.
And I just looked at it too. I went back not to the game last week that the Chiefs played, because why am I blanking on who they played last week?
Packers.
I just had Packers. Christian Watson's a good receiver. He's not exactly an alpha. Devontae Adams is an alpha. So I went back 2 weeks to the game against the Las Vegas Raiders, and it was L'Jarius Sneed exclusively on Devontae Adams. So that'll be really interesting to see if the Chiefs utilize that same strategy again. So it looks like it'll be Stefon Diggs versus L'Jarius Sneed if they go in that direction, or at least he was only targeted, Devontae Adams. That is when L'Jarius Sneed was covering him, even though he has one where he was matched up on Derek Nottie. So that'll be really interesting to talk about or to keep an eye out for as well. Last thing on receivers here, who do you think has a bigger day, Gabriel Davis or Khalil Shakir?
I think Davis has a bigger day today. I think he showed up in games against the Chiefs. I think DVOA wise, I put out a tweet this week.
Mm-hmm.
You go start running down the list. The Chiefs are top 11 in defending wide receiver ones, wide receiver threes, which is slot, how DVOA calculates it, tight ends, and running backs out of the backfields. Against wide receiver twos, which is the second boundary receiver per their metric, they're 24th. So, and that's over the course now of 12, 13 games, right? So, analytically, it says Gabe Davis has the best matchup of the Bills receivers, and he has shown up big in Chiefs games in the past. So I will say, just based on that, it should be a Gabe Davis day today.
Yeah. Randy comes in and says, I'm sticking with Shakir. It's tough not to stick with Shakir too, because he really has done like a really nice job the last couple of weeks. And I think his role is just going to grow and grow. And I'm really looking like the rest of this year is what the rest of this year is. I'm really looking forward to, especially if Joe Brady stays, how Khalil Shakir's role will grow when he's just like completely integrated into the offense from day one, right? Like Khalil Shakir was fighting for a spot last year. Khalil Shakir was fighting for a spot this year. Next year, I think Khalil Shakir is going to go into the season as your go-to slot receiver for the Buffalo Bills. And it's going to be really interesting to see how he continues to develop, especially with a secured, cemented role on this football team. I really like the ceiling for for Khalil Shakir, but I think I'm with you. I think I'm going to go with Gabriel Davis again, just based on sort of the matchups and such today. Trent McDuffie might be the guy following Khalil Shakir around. Trent McDuffie might be the guy matched up on Dalton Kincaid. Who knows how the Kansas City Chiefs, Steve Spagnuolo, is going to roll in. That's sort of the last talking point I have here for the Buffalo Bills on offense. You can't underestimate Steve Spagnuolo. He's one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. Here's probably my best anecdote or analogy for today. Get ready for this one. This is right from my notes. He can make chicken salad out of chicken shit. And this year, he actually has some free-range chickens to work with. So Steve Spagnuolo, he's a really good defensive coordinator. I can't believe I put that in my show notes, but he's a really good defensive coordinator, and he's got some pretty good players. This defense has been retooled. It's not perfect, but it's been retooled. They do have some injuries. But what are your thoughts about the Buffalo Bills having to go up against one of the defensive masterminds in the National Football League?
Yeah, the Chiefs are a really interesting defensive study this year because turnover margin wise, they haven't been good this year. They're bottom 7 in the league. They have the second fewest interceptions in the league.
Yeah.
They have the second fewest defensive penalties in the league, and they're third best in points per game allowed. So they are a team that they basically allow you a little bit to move between the 20s, but they're not giving up a ton of points. They're not necessarily taking the ball away a ton, but they're not giving up a lot of points and they're not giving up a lot of touchdowns. So to go with that, they have with the takeaways, but they have the 5th most sacks in the NFL as well. So they're creating negative plays in a different way, not necessarily with takeaways, but with sacks and with not allowing teams to score touchdowns. So to me, the Bills, this comes down to red zone for both of these teams, and especially for the Bills offense, red zone, which has been better this year than a year ago. The Bills really need to capitalize in the red zone today. To me, that's a big key to this game, scoring touchdowns and not field goals.
And Randy's spot on when he says, dare we say Kansas City has a bend but don't break defense. They truly do.
They do.
Like, because they're not turning the ball over, or like they're not getting turnovers, right? They're not forcing turnovers. But as you mentioned, they're not giving up a lot of points this year. That is a defense that's and Charles G comes in and makes a great comment about their defense. Josh will have to identify blitzes pre and post snap. He brings heat from everywhere. Spot on, Charles, because this is right in my show notes here. They are second in the NFL in utilizing a seven-man box. They are 10th in using a 3-man rush. and 7th in blitz rate. So they put 7 guys in the box, but they hardly ever utilize all 7 of those guys to go after the quarterback. They hardly ever keep those 7 guys at or around the line of scrimmage. Again, 10th in the NFL in the use of 3-man rushes, 7th in blitz rate. It's all about confusing the quarterback as to who is blitzing and as to who is dropping back in coverage. Smoke and mirrors is the staple of a Steve Spagnuolo defense. Looking at some other statistics here, another thing that Steve Spagnuolo likes to use is he likes to use a lot of variance on defense as well. The Kansas City Chiefs are top 10 in usage rate for 4 different defensive formations. The 4-2-5, the traditional nickel, where McDuffie is in the nickel. The 4-3-4, the traditional 4-3 base, where Leo Chenal comes in and he's oftentimes uses a pass rusher. And then they've thrown a lot of this in there this year, 4-1-6, 3-2-6, where essentially Brian Cook comes in as a third safety on the defense. They add a 6th defensive back. Brian Cook is not playing today, so it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they go away from that or if they plug another player into that. But Josh Allen is going to see plenty of different looks from Steve Spagnuolo today.
He's going to see plenty of different looks. And the other thing here, too, to note is like in a game like this, and a lot of conversation around like Sean McDermott going for it or not going for it on 4th downs this year. The Chiefs are the, they're one of the best teams actually defensively at defending 4th downs this year. So can the Bills have some success? Because it would seem like that there are going to be moments in this game where the Bills are going to have to decide whether to go for it on 4th downs and like how aggressive will the Bills be after what happened in that Philadelphia game and really in other games where they got away with it. Tampa Bay comes to mind, etc. But Chiefs have been really good at defense on 4th down, where they're middle of the road kind of on 3rd down. So 4th downs for the Bills offense today, big talking point as well coming after that Eagles game. Let's see what they decide to do on 4th downs today.
All right, transitioning now to the Buffalo Bills defense versus the Kansas City Chiefs offense. The Chiefs, they run mostly out of 11 personnel, but at the same time, while they run a majority of their snaps out of 11 personnel, they have the 10th highest usage rate of 12 personnel in the NFL and the 2nd highest rate of 13 personnel usage in the NFL. So those are the 3 formations that they like to run out of: 11, 12, and 13. Their weaponry has been a question all season. We talked about at the top of the show, Isaiah Pacheco has been sort of the heart, the soul, the identity of the Chiefs offense this year. He is out in this game, meaning Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jerick McKinnon are going to be carrying the load at running back. Maybe we see Deneric Prince, the running back out of Tulsa, get some play for the Chiefs today. Who knows what Andy Reid could possibly throw out there. At wide receiver, they've been very underwhelming. Rasheed Rice has had a couple of games here or there, but Valdez-Scantling has had his issues. Sky Moore, Justin Watson, Kadarius Toney, and Richie James. Toney and James have not been playing a lot as of late. Mecole Hardman is on IR. Then you obviously have Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, and then maybe you see a little bit of Blake Bell. There are 2 tendencies that stuck out the most to me when looking at the SIS data for the Kansas City Chiefs offense. They were 4th in the NFL in the use of motion. They are 7th in the NFL in the use of RPO. They are 5th in the NFL, so actually 3 tendencies, in the use of screen passes. We have seen the Bills struggle with all of these things at times this year. To me, the Chiefs offense today is going to be predicated on going east-west, putting Bills defenders in conflict. I think we're going to see a lot of jet sweeps, a lot of end arounds, a lot of screen passes, a lot of, quite frankly, just getting the ball into Jerick McKinnon's hands in whatever way possible, especially in the flat. Force Bills defenders to move sideline to sideline and to tackle.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right, if you're the Chiefs, because Pacheco out for this game. Bills have struggled in defending screens. Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jerick McKinnon, both excellent receivers as running backs. So the Chiefs want to kind of lean into the strengths of their personnel, which, Andy Reid will definitely do that and has done that throughout his coaching tenure. Like, it would make sense that Helaire and McKinnon would both be used pretty heavily out of the backfield as receivers. And so it makes sense, sending guys east-west. We'll see what happens from the passing game standpoint out of the backfield, but also, a guy like Rashee Rice, like you mentioned, 52 catches on the year, is having a nice rookie season, could potentially be a matchup problem for guys on the outside with his height. But ultimately, that motion is really going to be the key, I think, right? And the Bills, how they react to that. I don't think really the Eagles used a ton of motion against the Bills in that game. That's just me kind of conjecturally stating that, but I don't recall the Eagles using a ton of motion. The Chiefs will use a ton of motion in that RPO game. That quick passing game as well from the RPO is something the Bills really have struggled with defending. And again, I mentioned, right, the Bills scoring in the red zone. It's going to come down to, as Randy says, getting off the field on third downs. And the Bills have been prone to giving up big third and longs. As we know, they're middle of the pack. Both of these teams really are middle of the pack in third down conversion rates allowed. They're actually only separated by 0.5 of a percentage point in third down conversion rate allowed, just under 40%. So again, offense is converting on first down. I would expect the Chiefs to have a decent conversion rate on third downs, but it is again about the Bills not giving up points once the Chiefs get into the red zone.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the again, another emphasis for the Chiefs this week is going to be to control the time of possession, right? They're going to try to, I think, dink and dunk the ball down the field. They're going to try to keep picking up and converting like third and short situations, putting themselves in favorable third and short situations, trying to work their way down the field, try to accumulate as most points every single time they go down the field, and just milk the clock and keep a guy like Josh Allen off the football field. I think patience is something that Andy Reid has a lot of. It's something that Patrick Mahomes has a lot of. And that patience has benefited them for years. If the Bills had a little bit of the patience that the Kansas City Chiefs do, we'd probably have a Lombardi trophy at this point. If Josh Allen had that kind of patience that guys like Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes do. So their patience is their biggest attribute. I wouldn't be surprised to see Kadarius Toney maybe get a couple more snaps this game. Like I said, to try to get the ball into the hands of playmakers. Jerick McKinnon was a fantasy stud from week 13 to 18 last season. He won some people a lot of money last year. Could history repeat itself? I think Jerick McKinnon is going to be a huge part of this Kansas City Chiefs game plan today. I think even if Isaiah Pacheco was playing today, Jerick McKinnon didn't have a touch last week. I'm not sure if he was hurt or what, but Jerick McKinnon didn't have a touch last week. So he was hurt.
Yeah, I can't remember if he missed the game or not, but he has been banged up.
Okay, so who knows what his health is? I didn't have a chance to sneak.
He's playing today.
Injury report, outside of I didn't have a chance to sneak whether he was on the injury report or not, but
he was on it this week, but he's going to play. Yeah.
All I saw was the guys who were out, so that's on me for not doing my homework there. But could history repeat itself? Like I think even if Isaiah Pacheco played, I think a guy like McKinnon would have been a big part of this game plan. You have guys like Justin Watson and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They're going to try to get them down the field. They're going to try to get you over the top. The Buffalo Bills are probably going to play a lot of too high shell to keep the Chiefs from doing that, even though those two aren't all that great at doing it. They're going to try to attack you underneath with Jerick McKinnon. They're going to try to use a lot of window dressing. All of that you have to deal with. And then on top of that, you have to deal with stopping Travis Kelce, who statistically has been fine this year, but he has not appeared to be the same sort of X factor that he has in years past. Are the Buffalo Bills going to bring out the X factor in Travis Kelce today?
Yeah, you know what's going to happen today. Travis Kelce is going to have a monster game. We're going to get multiple. We're going to get multiple shots of Taylor Swift, and MVS is going to make a deep catch.
He's going to catch it. Yeah.
He's going to actually,
or he's going to get the penalty called on, or he's going to get the penalty called on him this time.
Yeah, one way or another, like all these MVS drops or whatever, like somehow it just happens against the Bills where these things just go against. He'll make some kind of long catch. That's a guarantee.
Last thing, or actually, there's two more things that I got, and obviously you might have some more things as well. So, need to attack Wanya Morris at left tackle is something that's in my notes. We talked about at the top of the show. Leonard Floyd has been playing a lot of left end this year and rushing from the left hand side. Just like when the Eagles had Johnson out, you had Leonard Floyd creating a lot of pressure.
Yep.
I know that Von Miller is more comfortable on the right hand side. Whatever, I don't care. Flip Leonard Floyd to the right-hand side. Put your best pass rusher this year, which is Leonard Floyd, up against Wanya Morris. If it's Von Miller going up against Wanya Morris and he's getting stonewalled and the Buffalo Bills do not get the adequate pressure on Patrick Mahomes that they should, I'm going to be freaking mad. the next time we do this show, because I think that'll be a serious miscalculation on the Bills' part, and it will show just how sort of like controlled this coaching staff is by Von Miller, if Von Miller is the guy who's getting those repetitions.
Yeah, and I think like that makes sense to me, but I also don't hate the matchup of Leonard Floyd going against Jawan Taylor because, and I know Jawan Taylor has been, under the microscope this year around like his false starts and his deep sets and things like that, but he's gotten a lot of penalties this year, Jawan Taylor. I don't hate the idea of letting Epinesa loose against Wanya Morris and having Floyd going up against Taylor. I don't hate that idea, but you're right. Like in certain situations, it may call for Floyd matched up against Wanya Morris. It makes sense. Like ultimately, the Bills need to find a way to get pressure with the front four. And so if that means like kind of feeling out how this game goes early, maybe you start with like your normal alignment where Epinesa will be lined up against Morris and Floyd will be lined up against Taylor. Maybe that's not working so much, and maybe you flip it around a bit. But I do think it's important for the Bills to find that out early in this game. What alignments are working for them to generate pressure with four, because to me, again, these are the two least sacked quarterbacks in the NFL, like bar none. Like guys who've started all season 10+ games. Josh Allen's only been sacked 15 times. Patrick Mahomes only 17. Now that's a credit to both their escapability and the offensive line play, but these guys are also both top 4 in dropbacks this year. So whichever defensive line can get home as well with just their front four, to me, is a big story of this game. So as you mentioned, what is that going to be? Is it going to be Floyd against Morris? Are they going to figure it out? Can Epinesa get home? It's going to be a fascinating thing to watch, I think, today.
Last thing that I have on the defense, if you're someone who live tweets the game like me and reacts in real time, maybe don't be too quick to applaud the defense if they get out to a hot start, because you will likely be old takes exposed if you do. A great statistic that was relayed on social media by Anthony Prohaska of the Disguise Coverage podcast. Check that out every Tuesday. Great podcast. Proanth tweeted, the Bills defense from first to second half of games this season. In the first half, they are 6th in overall success rate. In the second half, they are 27th. The Bills in the first half are 2nd in rush EPA. They are 29th in the second half. The Bills in the first half are 1st in rush success rate. They are 27th in the second half. The Bills are 1st in EPA per rush in the first half. They are 26th in the second half. The Bills are 1st in positive play percentage versus the run. They are 19th in the second half. They have utterly collapsed in the second half of games this season under Sean McDermott. They did it in Philadelphia. New England comes to mind as well as another humongous second half collapse for a defense. That last drive will be ingrained in my memory forever of that Patriots game. So the Buffalo Bills defense needs to show up for a full football game today. That would be appreciated.
Would be appreciated. I wish you didn't say all those stats because now I'm depressed. So yeah, I mean, this has been a talking point, right? Ever since, I mean, all year and really going back several years at this point, the second half and especially late game collapses of this defense. It's a trend, right? I mean, it's happened multiple times, multiple games. Josh Allen walking off the field with a lead and the defense giving up that lead in the waning moments of games, or really just collapsing in the second halves of games and forcing the pressure back on the offense. But yeah, I mean, ultimately you want this game to come down to where the Bills are ahead by more than one possession late in the game, because I personally will be extremely scared again that if the Bills have to protect the lead late in the game, one possession, that they will give it up.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of confidence in this defense right now. If this is a tight game, I want Josh Allen to have the ball in his hands to end the game. I would not like the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands with a chance to end the game. And obviously, Josh, he's done well. He's walked off the football field with some leads, but he had a chance to put it away in Philadelphia. He didn't do it. So I'm not completely blaming the defense and, completely taking away any blame from Josh Allen. But at the end of the day, I would feel a lot more comfortable. I would feel a lot more comfortable down 3 or tied or down 1, whatever, with the ball in Josh Allen's hands with 2 minutes to go than I would up 3 points or 1 point with the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands.
And how sad is that?
Yeah, it's not. That's not great. Before we get to our superlatives, special teams could actually be huge in this game. Some big matchups: Tyler Bass versus Harrison Butker, Sam Martin versus Tommy Townsend, Deontay Hardy versus Richie James. Some of these special teams matchups could legitimately make or break this football game. Missed kicks could be huge. Bad punts could be huge. Any sort of mistakes on special teams could be critical, whether it's a muff punt, a fumbled punt, or even a big return. Either way, like these types of plays on special teams could make or break this football game.
Harrison Butker has not missed a kick, field goal, or extra point all year. So
He's back.
look,
He struggled last year. He's back.
But kickers miss, right? Like he's got to miss at some point, right? Like, I mean, like when is the last time? I'm sure it's happened that a kicker hasn't missed a kick an entire season, right? I mean, I'm sure it's happened in NFL history, but like
this is great analysis. He's due for a miss, baby.
he's due. Like I mean, he is like he's made every single kick this year.
I need Jim Nance to talk about how he hasn't missed a single field goal all year.
Something's got to give.
When the game is on the line, like say the Bills are up 1, the Chiefs drive the field, they're kicking a 40 some odd yard field goal to win the game. I need Jim Nance doing nothing but repeating over and over again. Harrison Butker has not missed a field goal all year. Harrison Butker has not missed it just over and over again, just to jinx it out of it.
The problem with this situation is the Bills always seem to like no one ever misses kicks against them. So something's got to give here, and like maybe we'll see. We need the Jim Nance jinx, as you and Randy put it. So let's get it.
Last but not least, before we get into our superlatives, complimentary football. I know people don't want to hear that word, but I think it's going to be vital in this football game. At the end of this football game, who has the better average starting field position, who has more time of possession, who forced more turnovers. 2 of the 3 should win you this football game. If the Buffalo Bills can get more turnovers than the Chiefs and control time of possession, I think that means they win the football game. If the Bills can get better field position and better time possession in this football game, even if maybe they lose the turnover battle by 1, I think they win this football game. I think the team that can get 2 out of those 3 could win the football game. And I'm almost assuredly can tell you that the team that if a team at the end of this game wins 3 out of those 3 categories, that team won the football game. I would be shocked if a team lost the football game, and I shouldn't be shocked as a Bills fan anymore, losing those 3 different categories. So the Buffalo Bills have to play some good complimentary football today. All right, before we move into superlatives, this show is sponsored by Picasso's Pizza, 4 great locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Buffalo Pizza since 1980. You can order online at picassospizza.net. And if you're an out-of-towner like us, you can even get it mailed to your home. And I can tell you from experience, it is just as good as getting it fresh from the restaurant. Again, that is picassospizza.net. All right, Dave, let's get into it. And people in the comment section, let's get into it as well. Our pre-game superlatives. Let's start with our take me higher player of the game. This is one player not named Josh Allen who needs to step up in a big way in order for the Buffalo Bills to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Dave, who is your take me higher player of the game? And then I'll read some of the comments in the comment section.
Yeah, I'll say this, right? I do think that the Bills overall have better ancillary weapons behind Stefon Diggs than the Chiefs do behind Travis Kelce. But to me, this game's going to be about the alphas on both sides, Travis Kelce and Stefon Diggs from a receiving standpoint. And so to me, it's Stefon Diggs who's coming off a couple quiet games in a row. I think now 3rd game with Joe Brady, Stefon Diggs, couple drops in that Eagles game, still statistically put up a pretty decent game and obviously had that really incredible touchdown catch. But I think it's time for him to have a blow-up game, right? I mean, he has to be the guy kind of to emotionally uplift the offense, in my opinion, much like Pacheco was that guy for the Chiefs, and he's out today. Stefon Diggs is there for the Bills to be their emotional sort of uplift on the offensive side of the ball. So to me, in a game of this magnitude, you need your best player outside of Josh Allen to step up on offense. And to me, that's Stefon Diggs. It's take me higher.
A lot of good comments here from the comment section. Roy Collins says Ed Oliver. Randy Hardman says Ed Oliver as well. And Randy Hardman goes on to elaborate. And I think it's a really good elaboration here. He says inside pressure will be key in getting Patrick Mahomes off his spots and hopefully force some bad decisions. Israel V comes in and says James Cook is going to step up. Carolina Frank thinks it's going to be Gabriel Davis. So a lot of good options there. I'm going to bend the rules a little bit like I do on occasion here for our pregame superlatives. My take me higher player of the game has got to be Sean McDermott.
Oh,
I think that his defense cannot collapse in the second half like it has regularly this season. And I think he cannot let the fact that he is the defensive play caller affect his late game decision making. So I think Sean McDermott has to take himself higher in this football game, specifically in the second half, if the Buffalo Bills are going to have a chance to win this football game.
nice
All right,
one.
on to our wild card player of the game. Dave, we'll start with you, and then we'll get to the comments in the comment section. I knew Randy wouldn't like that one. I knew he wouldn't. I knew I'm right though, Randy. Your wild card player of the game.
All right. Look, these guys have been coming on under a lot of scrutiny in recent weeks as the kind of aging duo rides off into the sunset together, or potentially not together. And in probably games past and years past, this guy would have been a take me higher eligible player. But I think this year he's kind of maybe vaulted down into the wild card realm. So I'm going to say Micah Hyde today. Some tough moments for him in some recent weeks. Obviously came out and sort of was one of the more vocal people to talk about Sean McDermott this week. So to me, like maybe this is a game for Micah Hyde to make a play on the back end. They try to go deep with MVS, maybe to tie in with Randy's point. At Oliver gets some pressure up the middle. Mahomes tries to go deep. Maybe Micah Hyde's back there to make a play and get a takeaway, a much needed takeaway for this Bills defense. So I know traditionally he's probably been more of a take me higher guy, but I think right now Micah Hyde's in the wild card sort of realm, and I'm going to say Micah Hyde as a wild card player today.
That's interesting, and I'll get to why that's interesting in a minute. But first, Roy Collins comes in and says Shakir. Charles G says Murray. But then back to why I think it's interesting. You said Micah Hyde. Randy Hardman says the back end boys, obviously alluding to Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer in combination. And Carolina Frank comes in and says Teron Johnson. I think the secondary is going to be important in this football game. And I know it's kind of weird because you look at the Chiefs' weapons and you're like, what? Like what? But it's going to be for the reason of like discipline and how disciplined are they and how are they going to play when a team is going to try to oppose their biggest weakness, and that is around the line of scrimmage. And that's why my wild card player of the game was Christian Benford, because I felt like, and I literally put in my show notes, cannot choose any of the other guys because they aren't really wild card type players. So you define Micah Hyde this year as a wild card type player. I was just like, this game. I was just like Hyde, Poyer, Douglas, Johnson. I'm like, it's not really fair for a wild card. So I just went with Christian Benford because I really do think it's the secondary in totality in this football game. The cornerback play, especially defending the flats and just defending the misdirections. I think that's going to be huge. You could even throw a guy like Terrell Bernard in there and his importance in this game, going sideline to sideline. It would be interesting to see if we see more Taylor Rapp than we do Tyrell Dodson, all those various different things in this football game, because I do think the Chiefs are really going to try to attack you in the flats, at the line of scrimmage, east to west. That's where I think the Chiefs are going to try to make a living today. And it's going to be very, very difficult for the Buffalo Bills secondary to handle a game plan coming from a offensive mastermind, a future Hall of Famer in a guy like Andy Reid. All right. Next up is our Respect You player of the game. This is one player or a couple of players, because we always seem to cheat on this one, from the Kansas City Chiefs that the Buffalo Bills have to respect in order to win this football game.
Yeah. I mean, look, my trend this year has been going with those interior, those interior defensive linemen. I mean, against the Jets, I picked Quinnen Williams twice, I think, as my respect you player. I think I picked Vita Vea, although he was out against Tampa. There was another team I picked, interior defense. It's Chris Jones for me. Again, we talked about how Mahomes and Allen least sacked quarterbacks in the league. We talk about interior pressure, throwing guys off, and interior pressure really maybe allowing the guys on the edge to collapse down on the quarterback. We know Josh is really good at stepping up through, but Chris Jones can make life miserable for any team. And he's a stud, and he's a guy that the Bills absolutely have to respect. You cannot allow big negative plays for your offense if you're Josh Allen. And the same goes for Mahomes, right? With Ed Oliver, we talked about as a take me higher type of player. So for me, it's Chris Jones in this game. You have to be sound against him.
Yep.
And I do think that, again, as we talked about at the top of the show, one way to neutralize him a bit is for the Bills to kind of stay balanced and keep dedicated to that running game today. So for me, Chris Jones, respect you player, has to be.
Yeah. Bunch of people coming in here. Spin says KC cornerbacks. Carolina Frank says all of Kansas City's tight ends. Charles G says Andy Reid. He's a play calling genius. And then we have guys like Roy Collins coming in saying Nick Bolton, who's returning today, and Randy Hartman saying Nick Bolton, who's returning today. I had Chris Jones as my respect you player of the game, but I knew that there was a 99.9% likelihood that you would take that. So I came in with a backup. And my backup was the combination of Nick Bolton and Willie Gay, because they are athletic. They are very good tight ends. They impact the middle of the field. They have sideline to sideline ability. Willie Gay and Nick Bolton, the combination of those two guys is really what stirs the pot outside of Chris Jones on that defense. So you really got to have a lot of respect, and you have to have a game plan to try to eliminate or to mitigate the damage that those two can do. So I went with Nick Bolton and Willie Gay as my respect you players of the game. And that'll lead us now to our fire sale, or our hottest take of this football game. Dave, I'll start with you. And if there's any comments in the comment section, I will get to our hottest takes from the comment section.
Yeah, my hot take today is no misses so far this year. Harrison Butker misses 2 kicks today.
Ooh.
Doesn't matter if it's an extra point or field goal, but I think Harrison Butker, 2 kicks missed today. The average has got to even out. He's perfect on the year. Let's bring that made percentage down a bit. Harrison Butker misses 2 kicks today. I'm not saying that's necessarily 100% going to impact the outcome, but it could have a big impact on the outcome if it's like before the half or whatever, right? So Harrison Butker, 2 missed kicks today.
My hottest take of the game is that the Bills combined for 200 plus yards rushing on the day, and that Josh Allen runs for 2 touchdowns. I think running the ball will be a big part of the Bills' game plan today. I think they will try to establish the run. I think they will try to maintain the run through all 4 quarters. I think they'll make it a focal point of the game plan today, and I think they will be successful. And I think the Buffalo Bills are going to have a big day on the ground. The combination of James Cook, Latavius Murray, Ty Johnson, and Josh Allen accounts for 200 plus running yards. And I think Josh Allen just turns into what he turns into when he gets into the red zone. I think he runs 2 touchdowns in today. So I'm going for the Bills 200 plus yards on the ground today. Charles G comes in and says Bills 0 turnovers today. Emil comes in and says Cook is going to cook. Kincaid, Roy Collins says he can go for 100 plus receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. That would be fun. Emil coming in saying, love this podcast. These guys rock. Thank you. We appreciate it.
That is a hot take, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a pretty hot take right there. All right. So that leaves us to our final superlative, and that is our game prediction. Hit us up in the comment section with your game prediction. And Dave, paint a picture for us. How do you think this game is going to go?
Yeah, I think the Bills lose the toss. They end up maybe potentially being victim of the double dip. But I do think before the half, Harrison Butker misses a kick. The Bills go into the half with a little momentum, and it's going to come out to their second half defense being on the field for the first drive in this game. And I do think that the Bills can potentially make a statement coming out of the half. I think it's going to be a tight game going into the half. Maybe either team leads by a possession or touchdown or less going into the half. And the Bills defense comes out and makes a statement opening drive of the second half to get some momentum. And the Bills offense kind of takes it from there. Ultimately, the Bills go up by, I'm going to say 8 points at some point in this game, 8 to 9 points. And they hold on through some miracle defensive stand or Chiefs missing a 2-point conversion or something and end up holding on to win this game. Bills 36, Chiefs 30 is my prediction for this game.
Dirty Jersey comes in, says 31-21. I think he means 31-21 Bills. Randy Hartman comes in and says game prediction, pain. Carolina Frank says Bills 34-27. Emil Production says Cook's going to catch the game-winning touchdown. My prediction here is Bills 30, Chiefs 27. I think Josh Allen gets the ball in his hands last and leads the Buffalo Bills on a game-winning drive, keeps the Bills playoff hopes alive, and keeps the Bills AFC East dreams alive for another week. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We appreciate you for joining us here on the Air Raid Hour pregame show. We'll get Roy Collins' prediction up here before we head out. He says Bills 27, Chiefs 25. A lot of these predictions are going to make me have a lot of anxiety in the second half of this football game, but you can catch us tomorrow, 9 p.m. for Bills Chiefs post game. Don't forget that the Cover One post game show is live tonight following the game, and David Fox will have his post game report on cover1.football immediately following the game as well. Dave, any final thoughts before we head out of here this morning?
Going to be a high tension game for sure. And then just a really quick reminder, we're rooting for the Jags, rooting for the Jets, rooting for the Chargers today as well. Colts, Bengals, I'm not sure who's better to win, probably the Bengals. So maybe throw the Bengals in the mix there as well. So some rooting interest as well for the Bills today.
Thank you, New England, too, Thursday night for not only beating the Steelers, but hurting your chances at getting a real franchise quarterback. Thank you, Bill Belichick. We really appreciate that. But hey, before we head out, again, we want to thank you guys in the comment section. You guys make the show what it is. We would not be the show we are without you guys. We would not have the fun that we have without you guys. If you guys could do us a favor, we do this pregame show a little bit earlier now for a reason, trying to catch as many eyeballs as possible. So the first way you can help us is by smashing that like button before you leave. That would be super appreciated. And if you think anyone else would enjoy this, Cover One pregame show, maybe as opposed to listening to some other place that might be talking about other things that are pretty superficial and not related to what's going on in the football field, click that share button. Send this link to someone via text message or email. We would really appreciate that as well. But Bills Mafia, it's time to prepare yourselves for some pregame shows. Don't watch the pregame shows. Go do some chores, get some stuff done, be productive members of society for like the next couple of hours. Then sit yourself down for 3 hours of commercial-free football before the Buffalo Bills take on the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead at 4:25 Eastern. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. And until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comments section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!